Sheffield City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Another club member, a very esteemed club member, Ray Woods, is one of the most travelled people in the world. Currently, he is ranked 56 on the most travelled people register, I presume that is, on the road to everywhere. A born traveller and a dreamer, Ray's Native American grandmother, a Cherokee Indian, recognises. Together they looked at the National Geographic magazines. She gave Ray money for travel. His mission from his Cherokee grandmother was to see all the people of the world are friendly. He returned home to tell other people. So Ray will be talking about his recent visit to the Philippines, where he became friends with Francesca Susano and her family. Francesca is 120 years old. He will then talk about the 15 most challenging countries to travel to. Maybe some of you want to go, but maybe after hearing Ray, you might not want to go. South Sudan, Afghanistan, Somalia. I don't think they're on many people's top 10 bucket list, but you never know. And in Thailand in 1963, where Ray started. Ray previously spoke to the club about visiting 319 countries and territories listed by the Traveller's Century Club. And after Ray will be followed by Margie Granger, who gave us hand-to-hand 10-minute, will give us a hand-to-hand 10-minute update to her previous presentation last October. So please, without further ado, welcome Ray, the Traveller.
Thank you, Roy. Well, what can I say? I wasn't born a usual guy, and my mother told me that a number of times as I became older, and she became older, and more than once she said, "Why don't you grow up?" So I'm 76 and I still haven't grown up, and I hope to keep it that way. Okay, there's a picture of a Cherokee Indian. This is the most unusual way to get involved in world travel. This is not my grandmother, but like I say, she was a Cherokee Indian, Native American, and somehow or other she married into a family that had a chain of lumber yards that started in 1889, and she was basically a duck out of water. When I was little, I'd sit on her lap and we would look at National Geographic, and she knew she had the right kid. I mean, I was totally immersed into, my gosh, these people are totally different. Well, when I got some years older, she gave each one of us grandchildren $3,000 to travel on. So in 1963, not being a very good student at the University of Kansas, I spent the whole spring semester immersing myself with about 40 different students from Southeast Asia, including 13 Thai students. And I ended up staying in Bangkok with a family there. In Chiang Mai, there were brothers of the students at the University of Kansas. They wanted me to stay with them, and I said, no, I want to stay. And I learned about hill tribes, and this was before trekking among hill tribes was popular. But I claimed to be the first hill tribe person to stay with them, and I'm sure I wasn't, but anyway, I did that, got back on the train, and came back to Bangkok. At that point, I had no money, I mean zero, but I got in a taxi, I knew where I was going, I went in to the family I was staying with, got my money, and paid off the taxi driver. That family had a daughter graduating from Chulalongkorn University. I went to that graduation ceremony. I danced with some of the nicest girls in all of Thailand. Then the family went to Hua Hin and was on the beach. Anyway, they put me on the train. I ended up in Songkhla. Now I'm down in the south part of the country, in the Muslim area. I stayed with the one girl's family in Songkhla. Got back on the train. When I went to Malaysia, there was a car in front of the train, and that was for the purpose that if a bomb got set off, it got hit on that car rather than the train itself. So when we talk about danger, I mean, usually it's fear of the unknown. It's not actually the danger, and that's a good example. Anyway, of course, nothing happened. Now, let me go to the next picture here. Now, I think traveling is taking advantage of opportunity. Every person in this room has opportunities to communicate with other people. My Peace Corps country is the Philippines. I was in Negros Occidental, Bacolod City. I learned that the oldest person on the planet lived in a city by the name of Kabakalan, and I was getting ready to go there. This was in April. This is a picture that I took. Now, is she 120 years old? As you know from living here in Thailand, there are people here that don't know when they were born. She doesn't, I don't know if she does or not. The family says she's got a record of when she was born. Anyway, Guinness Book of Records does not list her. The local hotel gave her a 119th birthday party last year. So the whole family claims she's 120 years old. One way or the other, I knew I was in the presence of a very unusual person. I spent the better part of the day with them. I had invited them to lunch in Kabakalan. This little old lady, she's not very big, got in a tricycle, came into the city, and so forth. The granddaughter, who's a massage therapist, is keeping her alive. And that granddaughter and I communicate with on Facebook and directly every day. So I feel like I'm kind of an oddball. Why am I the person of 7.5 billion people on the planet that I would have the most Western connection to this woman? This is a picture outside of the humble house she's in. They didn't have a TV, so I bought them a TV. No reason not to be a nice guy. That's her getting ready to get on a tricycle. So, and she's not in the best of health. She was born up in the hills. I had a car and a driver. We went up into the hills and met some of her relatives. Anyway, she ate vegetarian food most of her life. She was born before 1900, so she didn't have very many medical problems, obviously. Wouldn't have gone to a doctor most of her life, maybe some native medicines, and so forth. Okay. Traveler's Century Club. In the year 2001, I was in Cuba. We'll back up. I was in Cuba, and the leader of our group was a German guy, and he was getting ready to go to Somalia. Now, I traveled through Southeast Asia when I was a young guy. Thailand was just one of those countries. And I thought, man, for all my trouble, nobody goes to Somalia. And it took me several days to get my head wrapped around it. So guess what? I went to Somalia with the German guy. And I can tell you right there, if you're going to do something crazy like that, you want to go with people who know what they're doing. And already right then I was learning about things I didn't know anything about. Somalia is actually broken up into 3 countries. Djibouti was the French part. Half of it was British Somalia. That's a wannabe country. They're not a country, nobody recognizes them. They have their own currency, their own license plates. And then the main part of Somalia is Mogadishu, which is definitely more dangerous to travel to, and that was the Italian part. Anyway, I just kept going with that club, and next thing I knew, I got hooked on it. I passed I passed out to each table this list, and at the time I completed the 319 countries, and they call them countries, but over half of them are countries. Anyway, I did all 319. Trust me, the list here was much harder than going to all the countries in the planet. And have I been to every country? Absolutely yes. In this club, airplane landings count. I don't think on any country that I only did an airplane landing. Anyway, I had like 8 airplane landings, little places that they listed out in the Pacific Ocean, for example. Okay, this is the second club, and I'm going to mention it because this is the one where I'm ranked in the 50s. The most traveled person in the world is Don Parrish. And I know him. I've traveled with him on 3 or 4 different occasions. He's from Illinois. I've also traveled with number 2, Bob Boniface. Charles Veely, I've traveled with Charles. He's actually the inventor of most traveled people. Bill Althofer does a lot of trips into Russia. And if we jump down to number 8, Jorge Sanchez. He comes here to Patio fairly often. I know him. And then on the second 10, I don't think I know hardly anybody. But anyway, that's the second club. There's a club, a travel club out of Britain, so forth. Okay, I want to stop right here and tell you, when I arrived 7 years ago in Thailand, I knew I wanted to come to Pattaya. I liked what I saw about Pattaya. Frankly, some characters. And I'm one of them, and I thought, well, I'll probably fit in. And after, I don't know, 8 months, I'd fallen in love with a Thai girl. I did not know what I was doing. And I kept hearing this deal, Pattaya City Expat Club, you need to go there. The motto is, expats helping expats. So, when I got down, what was the name of the place that we met down on that beach road? Anyway, down there. Now, the first person I met was Wilson. Now, I'm on a mission, and I've got problems. And he said, well, go talk to this guy right over there, Hawaii Bob. Tim's sitting right there, his brother. Anyway, Hawaii Bob, those of you who know him, a very interesting person. Perfect? No, but a lot of us aren't perfect. But did he do stuff? Absolutely. Was he head of the expat police? Yes. Was he involved in this club? Yes. Anyway, we became very, very good friends. I spent most days with him. And then other people I got to know, Richard Smith, sitting back there. Ren has been very, very helpful in putting this program together and the inspiration. And while you've been gone, Roy, he's got some awesomely good programs, led by, in my opinion, the Cabbages and Commons guy. If you weren't here for that, you missed a wonderful program. Richard Silverberg is over here. Richard's a past chairman and a tech guy, and he's the one that helped me put these pictures together. Pat Cloister, and I need to mention her because for me to go around every country in the world, probably 35%, I was traveling in some kind of group. And groups are wonderful. And she links up with Victoria, who's not here today. But when you've got a good leader of a group that's well planned out, you're on a good roll. And a number of us were in Bangkok on Thursday doing stuff that you would never dream of doing without her putting it together and having the band and so on and so forth. Not going on, I don't know, 5 different trips within the country. Every one of them's been good. And I know Pat led a group to Indonesia, up into Myanmar, Vietnam, with Victoria, and Sri Lanka. And it was also a way of networking with people in this club, and that was nice. Also, another tie that I've had is Rotary Club. There's a number of Rotarians here today. George Wilson has just been the president of the Padia Rotary Club. And George, good to see you there. Ann Smith has been good to get to know and talk to, and I know she's helped the club. In Padia, sometimes, I'm trying to think how to word this and get away with it. Sometimes our sites aren't what they could or should be. There are people who help raise us up to a higher level to music. Rand is one of them. By the way, his program on dancing, that was a classic program. He's a world-class dancer. I would never have thought that. Anyway, who I want to point out, though, is Judith and Les. And thank you for helping raise our sites to a higher level, both of you. And also for the foundation work you do. Another person I need to mention is Kelvin Downfield. Kelvin helped me do my will, and my attorney back home insisted that I have one, and I'm glad I do. There's another person. Another person I need to mention is Daryl Vaught. Daryl's been very helpful on several different things, and a key person of the club. And all you got to do to know he's important is attend a few meetings. Roy, I've gotten to know, and of course he's the chairman and a key person in this club. And the nice thing is, this club does run without you, Roy, like you said last week. So, okay, now we're going to go forward. Okay, 1963, my University of Kansas, I did not know what was possible, but I stretched myself out. The war is going on. Guess what? I not only went to the neighboring countries, I went to Cambodia. How did I get in? I wrote a letter to I don't know that it was an embassy, a consulate office in DC about what a great person Norodom Sihanouk was. And guess what? They gave me a visa. Did I go to Cambodia? Yes. Did I speak French? No. Did I talk to anybody when I was in Cambodia? No. Guess where I went? You'll never believe it. I went there. I got on a bus. It took me 21 hours to get there. I was in the country only 72 hours. Unfortunately, I had to get back on the same bus to go back to Phnom Penh. Fortunately, I've since been back to Angkor Wat. And that's just an old picture. Richard helped me come up with these pictures. And that's Phnom Penh in the old. Okay, we want to talk a little bit about danger versus fear of the unknown. Ever so much travel is not about danger. It's not knowing what's going on. I was in Moscow with a group. It's called People to People. It was put together by a company by the name of Oppentour in the United States. The idea was to get people together and engage with people, yes, including the communist countries. We'd gone to Shanghai, Beijing, in Moscow. They failed to let us in our embassy, interest. When we got to Leningrad, we went to our consulate office, and at the front door was a guy shaking, and it turned out to be the consulate general. We had a meeting with him, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Have you heard the news this morning?" And we didn't know the news. He said, "Well, 2 hours ago, the Russians shot down a Korean commercial jet with our most conservative congressman, Congressman McDonald out of Georgia, and we don't know why they shot it down." So now, instantly, we're almost frozen. Were we in danger? No. Were we in an interesting place at the right time? Absolutely. Now, a few days later, when we got to Finland, this was an around-the-world trip, I guarantee the people on that airplane cheered like crazy. We were glad to be out of Russia. Again, it was fear of the unknown. Cuba, jumping a few years later to 2001. These are just a couple pictures of Cuba. This is what you see when you're there. This is when that group, when I learned about going to Somalia. And yes, I did go. And Mogadishu, actually, if you Google search it, they'd have an airport, and you can't go there. But if you were to go, you would want to have some kind of connection. You'd want to have somebody who's somebody meeting you at the airport. There are some functioning hotels in Mogadishu. And it's a poor country, an arid country. And okay, now we're going to jump up to North Korea. North Korea, the head of the Traveler Century Club, Klaus Billup, called me on a Friday. He said, basically, you were not on my short list of key people that I've dealt with, but I've got 10 visas for the first Americans to go to North Korea. Are you interested in going? Yes. He said, okay, if your answer is yes on Monday, your passport needs to be in the mail to a certain visa collection service. When I go into all these countries, by the way, you'd send the passport to the visa company in DC, and they would take it around to 3, 4, 5 different embassies collecting visas. So I was very familiar with that already. But anyway, the visa was not to North Korea, but it was to China. So once we got the the visas got stamped and sent back to California, and that's where I caught up with my passport a week later, and we took off a week from the beginning of this story to go to Beijing. Anyway, it's quite an interesting story, and it's a long story. But there were 10 of us who went, and again, mostly you're dealing in fear of the unknown, but I'm traveling with the world's most traveled people, if you will. And we're not there to ask stupid questions of a guide. Like, what do you think of Kim Jong-un? You don't ask that silly kind of a question to a guide, because they're not going to give you what they really think, right? So anyway, one of the things we did was, I need to stop and say, the invitations for us to go to North Korea would have been approved by the father of Kim Jong-un. Some lowly person in North Korea did not invite 10 Americans and give permission for us to come. So this was done at the top level. And so we were royally treated. And I should have had a picture put in here of the Pueblo. Remember years ago, the North Koreans took our ship, and that's a showpiece in Pyongyang. And when we went there, I might say that the head guide, I asked him, I said, okay, how many Americans have come on the Pueblo since you've had it on display? And he said, your group will make a total of 50. So not very many. They had another, and this was the group. By the way, when I was going around all these countries, I didn't take pictures. My motivation was to get to every country. Anyway, this is our group. Klaus Billup's on the left side. Arguably, the world's most traveled woman is in the white. If you Google search this, that 100,000 will hold up. It's in it's a show. All of these people run out after 10 minutes, and a whole bunch of other people come running back in. The 100,000 are on the outside of the stadium, if you will. A couple of years they haven't had it, and I'm not sure why. Given the current politics, they'll probably crank it back up again. The hotel I mentioned we stayed in Pyongyang was two buildings. I think 80% of it was a dysfunctional building. Had an old funky TV, only had 2 channels on it that didn't work very good. So, and basically, even by then, North Korea was going downhill economically because they no longer had Russia's support. All right, very interesting. We go to the DMZ. Okay, now you can go to North Korea. In fact, who's been to North Korea? All you got to do is walk around that building. Anybody been there? To the DMZ where you walk around the table? on the other side here in North Korea. Now the difference was with our group, we're coming from North Korea into South Korea. With me? Nobody in our State Department was warned that 10 Americans would be there. And this is an Army Marine Corps general. He's looking in the window. They figured out that we're Americans. It's like, what the hell are these people doing here? And I really think it's like, are you safe? My question looking at him was, am I committing treason to be on the north side? Now, I've always believed in tourism, and that includes North Korea. So I didn't think about that too long. But anyway, that was my look to him as he's looking at me. This is Klaus Philipp on the left. This picture I really like because people around the world are friendly. Are there exceptions? Yes. They're not the people I want to talk about, nor would my grandmother want me to talk about. The people of the world are friendly. That woman is a North Korean woman that's got that wonderful smile on her face with my hand on her shoulder. Okay, now we're going to jump around. We're going to go into different conversations real quick, real fast. Ilulissat, I went there on purpose. It's Greenland. When you hear about global warming, something that scares me, when I was there, and I don't remember the year, but maybe 2005, the only time I'll ever hire a helicopter, with me being the only one in it. They're too expensive to hire. But I took it up from Ilulissat. I wanted to look down through the ice to see the new rivers that are flowing. And did I see them? Yes. And is it scary? The answer is yes. At least it was to me. These are just a couple of pictures from Greenland. Most of it's ice, and it's real thick. I mean, I forget, it's thousands of feet deep. Okay, we're up here in the lower or upper left, and Irian Jaya is in the lower right. This part's Indonesia. Irian Jaya should not belong to Indonesia. And the reason being, these are Melanesian people. They're not Malay people like the Indonesians are. And they're quite unsophisticated. Now, the next picture or two down, you're going to see what my grandmother and I looked at when I was a little kid. And again, she knew she had the right kid. That's pretty, I got to looking at the woman in the middle. See the cross on her? I think that's kind of an interesting picture. And I didn't take that picture. Richard and I picked these pictures out. And of course, it's got birds of paradise, surfboard. And then I see a little bit of that when I was in the New Guinea part. New Guinea and Irian Jaya are one and the same. They just got divided. The British were on the New Guinea side. Indonesia took over what's the western side. Okay, that's the picture that I wanted to show you because that's when my grandmother knew she had the right kid to go. And I might stop and tell you that the ambassador to Thailand in the year 2001 was from Kansas. Was dating a gal from Kansas. We ended up staying with David Lambertson and his wife Stacey, and I gave the ambassador a couple of penis gourds. It so happened Felix Moose, who heads up the anthropology department at the University of Kansas, was there. And for the next 45 minutes, he talked about the significance of penis gourds in New Guinea. We're jumping around pretty good. The only country that I ever went to illegally was Libya. And I was with the same guide that I was with in Cuba. And we went in from Tunisia, and as you can see, Tripoli is pretty close. anyway, he knew he could get us in and out safely. He'd done it a number of times. So anyway, we didn't have any problems. There's an Ephesus or Greek-Roman ruins outside of Tripoli that we went to. I remember that. And it's sad to see that Libya has had the problems that it's had in the last several years. Which that's Muammar Gaddafi. He was the head of the country when I was there. Threw that picture in just because they've been having trying times. They got a lot of oil. I've got a good Filipino friend right now that I communicate with. He's an engineer in the desert. Okay, now again we're jumping around. Anybody know about Chagos Archipelago? There's no reason for you to, other than Diego Garcia. You do, Pat? You been there?
Yes.
You went to Diego Garcia?
Yes. Twice.
Many times.
Somebody else been there?
Yeah.
Wow, good for you, Tim.
I was a Navy biologist, so I went out there quite a few times.
Well, we weren't allowed to go to that particular island. And, okay, how did I go to all these funky places? This trip was actually planned 2.5 years from the time I got there. But reading this list that I passed out, I started figuring out what the hardest places were. And when there was a group that said, okay, we're going to Chagos Archipelago, and we're renting a boat out of the southern Maldives, I said, I'm going. And then I planned a trip to other places I could tick off on the same trip. Diego Garcia, the U.S. rents that, right, Tim? Half of it, okay. Anyway, and we've had a number of bombing missions out of there, correct?
It's the precision ship base for all of the Middle East, so it's a huge archipelago or basin, and they have 20 to 30 pre-positioned ships in there.
So that's where you were, right? It's not a very big island. Again, I wasn't here. I was on a neighboring island. I'm collecting countries. I don't have to go to this base to say I've been to Chagos Archipelago. Okay, now we're going to get, okay, we're in a totally different area. This bottom part is Antarctica. And most people who go to Antarctica leave from either Ushuaia in Argentina or Punta Arenas in Chile. And I've done both. Anyway, where one of the neatest places I've been on the whole planet is South Georgia, and it's up on the right side. Now, every British person here will know about Ernest Shackleton, arguably the greatest explorer of his kind ever, and that's a stamp. And remember, he's the one that his boat got crushed by the ice. He took off on a little tiny boat with 3 other people. When they got to South Georgia, they had to walk over the island, which nobody had ever done. Anyway, when he got back finally to Elephant Island, all of his people were alive, like 6 months later or whatever. And this is actually, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of big critters that are here that aren't in this picture, but this is South Georgia. And it's amazing to see that much in the way of wildlife in one place. This is the gravesite of Ernest Shackleton. When I got there, I cried. This guy did not lead a normal life, and he made Britain proud, the whole world proud, that he was able to lead his people in such a great way. He also tried to go over the top of Antarctica, and he didn't make it, but he was smart enough to turn back. Almost made it. All right, another little strange place, British place, and that's Pitcairn, down on the lower right side. Now it's almost impossible to get on that island. You can go on a ship, and the ship will almost always never let people go on shore because the little bay where the boats go in and out of it's got some danger to it. They don't want the average passenger doing that. So again, with a small group, we hired a boat out of the southern part of Tahiti to get over to Pitcairn. Remember Mutiny on the Bounty? Remember the story? Fletcher, what was his name anyway? They got some Tahitian gals, and they took off hiding, and they knew that if they got caught, they'd probably be killed. Certainly would be in prison for the rest of their lives. And Pitcairn, they're able to live out their life in Pitcairn. This gal right here with the child, I stayed with her, and she's got the only 2 kids on Pitcairn. There's only like 44 people there. Now for you Australians, you own the island of Norfolk, which is over by New Zealand, and there's quite a few Pitcairn people who live there on that island. And I've been to Norfolk, yes. I think this might have been one of the guys that was implicated in child molesting or whatever. Remember they had a trial? It was a big worldwide news trial, and there were some of the guys here having sex with underage girls. And so Britain decided they were going to have a trial, and they did it through the New Zealand government. And what I observed when I was there, the trial, which lasted a long time, split the community. It so happened the oldest woman of Pitcairn had her birthday when I was there, and only half the island came. And the answer was, we're kind of split in 2. So that trial ended up having some animosity. And I don't know whether that's still true. It's been a while since I was in Pitcairn. Okay, Ross Sea. In this list here, I had to go to 7 different parts of Antarctica. Why? Because there's 7 different countries that claim land. And did I do it? Yes. But to do it, I took off from Ushuaia on a Russian ice boat and came to the Ross Sea, and then from the Ross Sea up to Christchurch in New Zealand. And then on that same trip, by the way, this was, I believe that was built in Antarctica, and Shackleton also used that. I think that's when he tried to climb or walk across to Antarctica, and it didn't work. By the way, you can, I could have had a picture taken of me like that. That's the emperor penguin. And that little part that lives, that's up by Argentina, that's not where the emperor penguins are. You gotta be on the right part of Antarctica to see these characters. And I've been there, yes, and it's an awesome, absolutely. Okay, the Australian people here. Okay, Macquarie is way the heck south of Tasmania. And by going to that little island, that counted for my Antarctica tick. And that made my 5th trip to Antarctica. There's only 200 people go to Macquarie in a whole year's time. And another beach landing similar to South Georgia. And yes, it's nice to be around people who know what they're doing and can navigate you through the critters. Okay, now we're going to jump to Africa. Again, we're jumping around. I had to tell you, okay, I sent out an email to a whole bunch of people. And again, I'm not working with the world's most traveled people. This country, even today, if you try to go there, you're not going to get there. But you'll never believe why. They don't want tourists. Why don't they want them? They have converted from a government that was, I don't know what it was, but anyway, there wasn't any business going on. The current government is way over the top on, let's say, exploiting some of the resources, timber, mining, whatever. A lot of business. So much so, every hotel room is full of business people. They don't want tourists. Anyway, I said, okay, how do I get in? A lawyer in my little town in Kansas said, I've got a client who's working, doing business in Angola. And I said, I don't care what it costs, you get me a work visa to go to Angola. That's how I went into Angola. I went in on a work visa. I got there. I've been to every country on the planet. I'm just saying, some of them are a hassle. And by the way, there was a young guy last year that completed going to every country, and I liked his quote. His quote was, to be a traveler, you have to be comfortable being in uncomfortable situations. So, and all of those travelers, if you look at them and say, man, I wouldn't want to do that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. Oh, I think we're almost done here. This is Angola. I threw that in there because there's 51 African countries. I've been to all of them. One of the things that I enjoyed doing when nothing else was going on was looking at hairdos. My God, they can be creative. I don't even know what I'm looking at. I never saw one quite like this. This is the capital, Luanda, in Angola. All right, now we're going to back up a few years. I took a trip, okay, again, I'm networking with the world's most traveled people, and they told me about a Pakistani guy who had trips in the Middle East. And so I got a hold of him, and I said, okay, here's the countries I'm missing, and I want you to plan a trip for me, and want to stay in decent places with guides, so forth, every day. And in Afghanistan, I stayed at the Intercontinental Hotel, and it got bombed last week. The picture you'll see is smoke coming up from the bomb. Again, that's not danger to me. That's fear of the unknown. The guide I had wasn't very good because he'd been living in Pakistan as a refugee. But I had a Corolla car and a driver, and we went to Jalalabad, that's on the right side, and then we came through the Khyber Pass into Pakistan. And I spent 13 wonderful days in Pakistan. That's another. I got a lot. I could have another program of countries as far as that goes. That picture's from last week. And the room that I stayed in had a plate glass, and there was been shot at, and the glass was shattered. Now I tell you a fun story. Okay, the guy that planned my trip, his brother was in Kabul, and he had guests from, I don't know, New Zealand or someplace else. So I'm on my own for several hours. So I go scouting around through the hotel, this hotel, and down on the bottom I found a massage place with Chinese girls. So I got a massage. Now, so anyway, I come back up, and here's the brother of the guy who's planning my trip. The first question, you have to think about this, the first question he had to me was, where's that massage place you found? Now, what had happened was, after I found that, I emailed the brother who was in Canada, and he immediately emailed it back to his brother. So even before meeting the brother knew that I had found this massage place in this hotel. And I understand we're in a Muslim country, so having a massage place was a bit unusual. I went back with another group to Afghanistan, and we went to Bamiyan, and very sadly, the Taliban, which is still alive and going, bombed out all of this stuff, and that is really sad. So ISIS and Taliban are out of the same bunch of people politically, and it's sad some of the stuff they do, and I think the Taliban may be making a bit of a comeback. Sudan. This is my passport, and I've had like 4 sets of extra pages. One of the visas in here is to South Sudan. And I waited to go when it was calm, and it was calm when I went there. And it's amazing what you can do on the internet today. That's a huge difference from years past. Anyway, I booked a hotel. My German guide, he had been to South Sudan several times. Anyway, I booked the hotel he recommended, communicated with them, and what I wanted was to be met at the airport. And they did meet me, and the airport's kind of a mess. There were maybe 25 airplanes at the airport, and maybe 18 were United Nations, trying to help make this a functioning new country. Now, this is the only new country in the last number of years. Have there been a whole bunch of new countries in the last number of years? Absolutely not. But this is the newest one, and I did want to say I've been to every country. So that's why I went to, and it's in the gray. Color-wise, the people are black. In the north part of Sudan, they're a lighter colored skinned people. In the south part is animist Christian, and the north part is more Muslim. They've got all kind of resources, but they're not taking advantage of them. And there's two major tribes. One is the Dinka tribe, and anyway, they're fighting the other tribe, and they're a mess. I would not go back there today unless I had super good authority. I was going to be okay once I got there. That's Newt Bold. He played basketball in the NBA in the United States. He's 7'6" tall. His son's going to play for Oregon State next year. University of Kansas wanted him. We didn't get him. He's the only guy in the NBA to ever have more block shots than points. 7'6", and when you go to South Sudan, it really was very entertaining how tall the people are. I enjoyed going there. And by the way, Africa is fun to go to. That's a picture of what I just showed you, my passport. And that's the visa that's in here. And that's an airplane, and one of the UN airplanes. So that's it.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ray. That was really entertaining. I enjoyed that. I've only been to 51 countries. I have a lot of catching up to do. Going back to the Filipina lady, 120 years old, the Occidental Negros, was it?
By the way, if you want to know more about her, you can Google search, just put in old Filipino woman, something like that.
Okay.
She's on the island of Negros. Go ahead.
And you mentioned that she attributed massage to part of her
Could you get the microphone closer to your mouth, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
You mentioned that she attributed massage as being part of her health and longevity. Was that the traditional hilot massage? No.
What had happened? Okay, this woman does not speak English. She's not educated. She can't read or write. Anyway, she's moved from her birthplace. She's moved closer to Kabankalan in this humble little house, and the granddaughter said she was pretty much bedridden when she got there. So the granddaughter knew massage work and massaged her back to some health. So I'm a lot of communication with the granddaughter, and I think she'll be lucky to make it one more year, which is kind of sad. I've tried to get some Filipinos involved, and so far, no luck.
When you have any questions, could you please stand up so everybody can see you? Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, for all the traveling you're doing, and it's amazing that you're here after all that. What did you do for life's work that allowed you to be able to afford this? It's got to be expensive traveling to 319 countries.
You're correct. I spent about $1.2 million altogether on the travel. And to get that money, I was lucky to have a son take over what I was doing and raise it up to another level. And it's a retail building material store that dates back to 1889. And I recreated it when I was there. But by the time my son took over, I really wanted to travel and I was kind of exhausted with the work. But we'd be something like a Home Pro today, a little bit different. Well, if you came to our little town of Kansas, you'd buy everything pretty much from our store. We even have a concrete company, a little bit different, small equipment, rental program. Not a big company, but big enough that allowed me to have the money to travel on. And by the way, the expensive trips were to Antarctica. To go to the Ross Sea was a lot of money on that Russian icebreaker.
On your list, you have African Egypt. Is there any other Egypt?
No.
I was looking and going, well, maybe it's divided someplace, but there's only one. Okay.
One of the things that is sad for me politically is looking at some of the countries that I've been to where I really like the people. Yemen is one of them. Just a neat bunch of people, but unfortunately they got the two groups of the religion that they don't get along, and Iran and Saudi and whoever's playing around, and I mean, and that's been in the news in the last few days.
Ray, have you ever felt endangered for your life in any of the situations?
When I took the car from Kabul to Jalalabad, we were in a Toyota Corolla, had a driver and a guide, and being a bigger guy, I'm sitting up in the front seat of the Corolla. And two young guys with submachine guns were in the middle of the road, and so they got in the car in the back seat, and I was in actually much better mental shape than the two guys I was with. They were a nervous wreck. But anyway, 20 minutes later, they got out of the car. And nothing ever happened. Again, the biggest thing is fear of the unknown. Even when you're in Thailand, it's like, okay, what goes on down in the southern part of Thailand? Well, 6 weeks ago, I went down there by myself. I didn't have any problems. Has there been some incidents even since I've been there? Yes, 2 of them that I know of. But as you all know that have been here for a while, like when there was a coup here, people back home, they're saying, are you all right? Well, your first answer is, hell, I'm not part of the problem. I'm not Thai. I'm a tourist. I'm okay. Don't worry about me. You know, the people that get caught up in the news are what news people that try to report on it and maybe get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the Southern insurgency that's been going on again since I was there in 1963, that's a Thai thing. Now, did I go through checkpoints? I probably went through 90 of them. Did they check me? No, they're not interested in me. Is much going on at the checkpoints? No. I can't remember the name of the little town I went to. I stayed one night in Patini, Hat Yai. I stayed there a couple nights. I was in Sun Kwang, where I'd stayed in 1963. There's a border town right next to Malaysia, where Malaysians come over. And that's where I went to. And that's where one of the incidents happened in the last couple of weeks. The little bomb or whatever that went off there was not targeted to tourists. So, again, fear of the unknown, I think, is the biggest factor. By the way, in the Philippines, I've been to Holo. I went there when I was 21 years old. That's another story. So.
Ray, have you been to?
Stand up, please. Stand up.
Have you been to the Omo Valley in southwest Ethiopia? Did you have any contact with them?
I know where you're talking about, and I've had a dream to go there.
Yeah.
But the answer is no.
Yeah, the Mursi tribe is probably the most bizarre looking people I've
Right.
encountered. But
I've traveled around through the north part of Ethiopia.
Mhm.
So, and the last time I was there, I stayed at the Hilton Hotel, and I forgot to get my visa to South Sudan. And so, I got a guy at the Hilton Hotel to help me, and ended up talking to the ambassador from South Sudan to Ethiopia. Anyway, I got it. It's in that. Had to wait for it 3 days.
You would be entertained by the Mercy. They're very strange looking people. They have headdresses with big horns coming out and all kinds of jewelry.
Yeah, I agree. One other little thing I want to mention that's a big benefit to travel. Okay. Let's talk about another club a little bit. Most travel people. I've been to 692 ticks or something like that on that club. There's like 852. So a whole bunch of them I haven't been to. Okay. Where he was born, I've been sitting over here in Yakima. I've been to every state in India. That was right before I came to Thailand and settled down for a while. Anyway, when I went to the different parts of India on 5 different trips, anyway, the last trip was targeted to the states I hadn't been into. So I went to, among other places, the Sikh part. Now, there are not 1,000,001 Sikhs in India, but there's quite a few here in Padia. And he's spoken here to this club before. Anyway, can you tell me who the 2 most significant Sikhs have been in the United States in the last, let's say, 10 years? Sikh heritage. One of them is our ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Her parents are Sikh, they came from India. And the other one was Governor Jimmy Kendall in Louisiana. So this small little group of people are very significant. Now, when I was in that part of the world, did I go to the Golden Temple? Yes. So when I say that, they smile. It's like, oh yeah, you went to the Golden Temple. He's even smiling right now. Anyway, that's what travel does, and that's probably a good way to end up this talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ray. Just before you sit down, we'd just like to present you with a certificate of appreciation, and we've applied for a new passport for you because we see that one's full. Okay? And we wish you the very best of luck on the next journey around the world.